Hello there, how are you all doing? Right, this is a video I've been trying to make for roughly about a week or two now. And it's on a few things. One is the government's newest idiotic action, shall we say. And the raising the colours sort of campaign that's going on across country, along with the young girl that was in Dundee. The whole situation surrounding her, and something said by a channel that I've only just come across, to be fair, but I was rather surprised to hear this coming from that channel. So, first of all, the government essentially siding with immigrants, basically stating something we already knew. Essentially, Lord Justice being in all his wisdom and backing by the government and the Fabian Society, essentially telling us that immigrants have more rights than the native British population. I mean, on the one hand, it's actually quite nice for him to be so honest for a change. At least they're telling us the truth. And on the other hand, it's probably the most treacherous actions done by the judiciary system and government that's ever been. Never mind blatantly in the public eye. Possibly makes it even worse. How this is going to play out is anyone's guess, but if ever there was a way to completely delegitimise your governing body, your system of law, and your actual power over the people under your system of governance, this was it. It is now clear that this government doesn't work for its own native population, and therefore is by default illegitimate. I think everyone should be able to see that very clearly now. The Raising the Colours campaign is fantastic to see. Gives people something to rally around and show their support to. Can't really say anything bad about that, can you? Apart from it does kind of take the wind out of the sails of any sort of real action by giving people a sort of an outlet in which to vent their disdain and their anger. Kind of took the power away from it. So while on the one hand, I completely agree with it, on the other hand, it doesn't half smell of containment exercise. By all means, raise the colours, but don't allow that to be all that you're going to do. That's all I've got to say really on that. The fact that the councils are taking the flags down like they are shows that in some respects it is working. It has them scared, and rightly so. In that regard, any kind of peaceful sort of political action is welcome. Next is the girl in Dundee. I've heard a lot of people talking about how it's a psyop and everything else. Yeah, I don't think that was a psyop. That girl was obviously scared. This obviously wasn't the first time that same person had been involved with that girl in some way that was detrimental to her mental and physical being. The way that he was moving forward constantly, the way she was moving back, meant that she was no threat. And it was him that was the actual threat. No one's even asked why he was filming her in the first place. Sure, the police say that they attacked them outside of a shop, but their behaviour or body language doesn't reflect that. Actually says something completely different. Says that she feared for her physical well-being in the face of this gentleman, if you can call him that, advancing on her. So, sorry if you think it's a psyop, but you either don't know body language or you're just part of the problem. And lastly, I've been watching the channel lately. It's really quite good. Seems to have a good head on his shoulders, even though just sound quite young. It's a channel called Richard IV. He's usually got quite a level head on his shoulders. Common sense way of thinking. Quite leaning, but there's something he said in one of his videos, and I'll link it below, that kind of troubled me.
Underlying issues to do with multiculturalism and diversity, and how basically the governments of Western nations are at war with their own people in very quick videos, bite-sized videos. So as I say, well worth a follow. But I wanted to talk about this a bit because he's found a clip of this ex-Italian Prime Minister speaking about how we need a United States of Europe. And I dare say many of you, if not most of you, would agree with what McCarthy is saying here about why this is a bad idea. And I do agree in principle, but I just wanted to make a video on this because I think there is a big issue that we face here as Europeans as well with regards to our future.
This is Mario Draghi, former Italian Prime Minister and President of the European Central Bank, advocating for a United States of Europe. He declared that the nation-state model in Europe is obsolete, which was met with a standing ovation. United States of Europe. He wants to get rid of the nation-state, so the idea of an Ireland, the idea of an England, Germany, Belgium, all these distinct countries, distinct nations, with distinct people, get rid of it. That's their idea. And this ties back into why they push diversity. And I keep saying this in my videos. That is why it's so important to protect our European identities. They do this so they can push a United States of Europe, because now Ireland's the same as England, England's the same as Germany. Nothing's unique, nothing's different. We're all the same, so why don't we all become one nation? Just because a Chinese person goes to India doesn't mean the Chinese person becomes Indian. It should seem obvious.
Now, I'm not disagreeing with his analysis here. I think he's quite accurate in what he's saying. The reason I'm making this video is because while the powers that be might be trying to create this United States of Europe with a homogenous identity so they can pack absolutely anybody into it from any part of the world and therefore extend their globalist ideological program, there will have to be some pan-European agreement in order to protect European culture and our historic nations. Now, to be clear, I don't know if Michael McCarthy agrees with this or disagrees with it. As I say, the video is not picking on him, it's building on what he said. So while I'd agree with his analysis that the EU in its present iteration is basically just a tentacle of the globalist liberal machine, my point is that I wouldn't be against such a body which was oriented in the other direction, i.e. something that actually celebrates Western culture, wishes for European people to maintain their majority in Europe, wishes for independent nations of Europe to maintain their individual character. Now, I know I'm playing a bit of a risky game here, because why trust an international body that's so ripe to ideological possession and corruption? Yet the way things have been constructed in modern Europe, to my mind, shows that we can no longer stand alone and save our countries. As I've said in prior videos, just imagine if Britain did elect some based right-wing anti-globalist government and they tried to enact a programme. Well, even if they overcame the mess of the civil service, the blob, the ECHR and so on, then you'd have to face the international global market itself, at which time you'd have trade embargoes, levies, economic sanctions, political pressure, as well as a collapse of public services and obvious enforced recession.
You see, the thing that I don't want to say annoyed me, because it didn't annoy me. It more, pardon me, it more showed his naivety, I suppose, likely due to his age. That he had towards certain ideas. That people of my age, who've also been at this for a long, long while, know all too well. This is to do with Europe. You see, the European Union has been a long-running hope for many people, really has, to have a sort of a United States of Europe, if you will, a federalised Europe. And these people believe that one ideal or one idea or one aspect of culture will cement this union, or be able to cement this union around that ideal. And that's not the case. The reason being is this: unlike many other sorts of attempts at this, say for instance the most successful, which is the United States, Europe isn't a fairly homogenous sort of people spread out over a vast landmass. These nation states, each of them has their own customs, cultures, ideals, ideologies, political leanings, political views, none of which are compatible. Unless you have a all-encompassing governing body sitting above it that is hammering it with a rod and dictating what it must and must not do. And even then, it is still tenuous at best. And this is no more perfectly exemplified than it is by the European Union itself, in which they've have this all-encompassing governing body, which is the EU Commission above it, that is unelected but appointed by the supposedly elected Parliament, who oversee the rest of the states, and they dictate what those states must and must not do. And it is also crumbling and waning and collapsing under its own weight. This is part and parcel why there's so much immigration into these nation states within its jurisdiction, because they over time gradually delegitimise the cultural differences and political differences of those regions, of those nation states, separate nation states, to bring it more in line with the regimes. The regime that it's under. The more people you have to dilute that nation state, the more easily you can, in theory, bring it under what you want, and that's not how it works, unfortunately. The people they are bringing in claim to be in line with what they believe in or anything but. So, if you were to dismantle the EU, there is not a cat and house chance that you could have a unified Europe in any way, shape or form, other than trade agreements. That will be it. You cannot have it political, you cannot have it ideological, because despite us all wanting to combat the same problem, the actual end result that we desire in every single nation state will be completely different. And again, the whole thing will collapse. There'll be chaos once more. Especially if there's no ideological anchor point to hold it to. Our only way out of this is a complete dissolution and dismantling of the EU, and for each of our nations to fight, quite frankly, go our separate ways. Unfortunately, there's no other way. Something that we actually tried to do with Brexit and didn't get, because the whole of our parliament was essentially against the idea, and now they're trying to suck us back in through the back door, that being the complete takeover of our military, and we lose our military capability or control of our current military capability, and we're no longer a nation, we're just a vassal. That's what Keir Starmer is trying to do at the moment. So yeah, you got some great ideas, mate, Mr. Richard the Fourth. Unfortunately, in that regard, you're completely wrong. Anyway, thanks for watching.